Hello, I'm Kimberly Helkett, and this is Al Jazeera's special and continuing coverage of President Donald Trump's 1 year in office. Well, upon his return to the White House, Donald Trump promised to upend the political establishment. In his second term, he's moved quickly to do just that. Well, to discuss this further, I'm joined in our Washington, D.C. studio by Patrick Mehra, chairman of the D.C. Republican Party. We're also joined here in Washington by Bruce Fein, former U.S. Associate Deputy Attorney General. But first, Al Jazeera's John Hendren has this report from Washington.
Donald Trump telegraphed plans to expand his presidential powers.
We're going to do a lot of things. You're going to see something tomorrow. You're going to see executive orders that are going to make you extremely happy. Lots of them. Lots of them.
In the first year of his second term, he's expanded the boundaries of executive authority further than any president in modern history. He's turned immigration officers into partisan agents, sending them to democratically controlled cities from Los Angeles to Charlotte, targeting suspected undocumented immigrants in raids, some of them fatal.
No!
States have sued to stop the federal invasions.
To ICE, get the out of Minneapolis.
Massive No Kings rallies across the U.S. protest the consolidation of presidential power.
We are done with this administration and their cruelty.
He usurped the congressional power of the purse, gutting the U.S. Agency for International Development and public media as his Republican allies on Capitol Hill stood idly by. He's turned the Justice Department into what critics call the Department of Revenge, targeting perceived enemies such as James Comey and Letitia James, with mixed success. He's expanded military powers, declaring alleged drug runners terrorist organizations and blowing them out of the water, and dramatically arresting Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro in his own country on drug charges.
Good night. Happy New Year.
The Supreme Court handed Trump a major victory when it granted him presumptive immunity from criminal prosecution for all official acts. That's a level of protection he didn't have during his first term. He shared his legal umbrella with supporters, pardoning 1,600 criminals convicted in the insurrection at the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. He's reshaped the White House itself, with sprinkles of gold leaf and a $400 million ballroom that dwarfs the old East Wing it replaced. Now, Trump says, there's just one check on his power. Quote, "My own morality, my own mind. It's the only thing that can stop me." The historic expansion of executive authority has Democrats scrambling to secure control of at least one congressional chamber in the 2026 midterms, desperate to stop Trump's surging presidential power. John Hendren, Al Jazeera, Washington.
All right, we want to talk a little bit more about this with our guests again in studio, Patrick Mehra and Bruce Fein. Let me start with you, Patrick. President Trump has bypassed Congress, issuing executive authority on immigration, tariffs, agency closures. Is this leadership, or is this congressional Republicans ceding power to the White House?
Thanks for having me here. Look, President Trump had 4 years after previously being president of the United States to sit and think about what he would do going forward. And so what you see with these executive orders is a president who's keeping promises. You may hear from time to time promises made, promises kept is something that the administration says over and over again, because the promises that President Trump made on the campaign trail, has assured that he is going to fulfill this time. And these executive orders are at least a way to keep a placeholder in place so that he is keeping his promise to the American people with a specific initiative. And so I am not surprised at all.
Well, I think the comments are in some sense misplaced. You cannot run a campaign on violating the Constitution of the United States. Indeed, Mr. Trump couldn't take office without saying that he would preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Richard Nixon won a far greater victory in 1972 than Mr. Trump did in 2024. over 60% of the popular vote, 520 electoral votes, 49 out of 50 states. He was impeached and removed from office for violating the Constitution within 18 months. I was part of that program. I was examining what were impeachable offenses that hadn't been examined since Andrew Johnson. And what we have with Mr. Trump on his first day in office, issuing these executive orders that are flagrantly unconstitutional. For example, saying that if you're born in the United States and subject to our laws, you're still not a citizen if I don't like your parents and think that they may have been here without authorization. He's decided on day one, I don't like the TikTok ban law. I'm not going to enforce it whatsoever. These are just examples of his ignorance and violating of his oath of office to support and defend the Constitution.
So, look, again, I would say this is an incident of promises made, promises kept. We have checks and balances in the United States.
He's saying
we have courts.
Patrick, he said
we have another branch of the federal government.
Use the president's own words. The only thing that can stop me, courts, no. Congress, no. The only thing is my conscience. He boasted about that. And then he goes and he abuses another example of the abuse of power right now.
Where are the Democrats in Congress?
The Democrats are weak and they're spineless and they're utterly disgusting because in my judgment, many of them believe in limitless executive power if they're in the White House.
That is correct.
They do not believe in the process either, which is why the system is going under. Both parties believe in limitless executive authority as long as we control it.
Do you agree
that
with
is
that?
not how the system's supposed to work.
It's certainly not, because we've repeatedly said this is a system of checks and balances. Patrick.
Look, it is. The Democratic Party is rudderless. I mean, there is no, if you're going to put up a picture of a Democrat right now, Al Jazeera couldn't come up with a Democrat they could put up to symbolize who is the leader of the Democratic Party in the United States. And so they are completely rudderless. And the Democratic Party is chasing after everything that President Trump says and does. They're completely distracted by everything that President Trump says and does, and this will likely be their undoing in the 2028
election. It may well
election.
Be, but oftentimes voters vote against something rather than for something, and they may vote against Trump. They see Renee Good being killed out in Minneapolis. They see what's going to happen in Venezuela. This was not an effort to arrest and abduct Mr. Maduro. We are still there. Mr. Trump has said we are staying and running Venezuela until I decide we want to get out.
Okay,
and he has
but
no
here's the
authority
thing.
from Congress.
And let's talk again about the use of the executive order as the authority that the president is drawing on.
There is no authority to the executive order to violate the Constitution. Read Article 2. I have read the Constitution probably 5,000 times. It nowhere mentions executive orders. And the president cannot issue an executive order that flouts the Constitution. Take Section 1 of the 14th Amendment.
So this is political strength?
No, it's illegality. It's despotism. Remember, we fought a revolution in July 4, 1776 against kings, against King George III, for the king can do no wrong. We are now embracing what we revolted against in 1776. This is a counter-revolution
okay, well, let's look
against
at
our
tariffs
entire
and
history.
The president talking about executive authority for tariffs, because that is a real signature action that we saw almost out of the gate in the spring of 2025. Patrick, talk to me about the use of tariffs, because Republicans control Congress right now. Why have Republicans in Congress let the president take that power away?
Sure, I think what you see so far, the tariffs are working. There were a lot of concerns initially about the tariffs from many different sources, but look, he's trying to create equality. I mean, we're not on equal footing with other countries. China's been...
But does he believe that the White House is not the co-equal branch?
Patrick, these are tariffs supposed to be for economic purposes. He tells Brazil, if you're persecuting Mr. Bolsonaro, who's my friend, I'm going to impose a tariff. He tells the European Union, you know what? If you don't let me take over Greenland, I'm imposing tariffs. These are not economic decisions. They're using tariffs to advance what his personal foreign policy is that he likes. And it's nowhere in the International Economic Emergency Powers Act. There's not a single word about tariffs. That is the revenue-raising authority that is entrusted to Congress exclusively.
But why have Democrats not reclaimed their authority of oversight?
Because the Democrats are just waiting till they get into the White House. They want to do the same thing. They are spineless and rudderless. Patrick is right on that score. They are the most ridiculously bad opposition that you can possibly imagine. But that doesn't excuse violating the Constitution because the Democrats are so stupid and bad.
Well, Patrick, I have to ask you this, though. Should one president be able to use his executive authority in this way? I mean, essentially what we've seen the president do is reverse decades of foreign policy by pen.
Yeah, I think what you see is President Trump admitting and recognizing that the world order is changing. And so he is adapting to the new world order.
Or is he changing it?
Well, no, I mean, the world order is changing. I mean, you have the rise of China. You have Russia continues to be an extreme threat. You have a number of other bad actors, right? And that relates a bit to Venezuela, for example. But with this, the executive authority, he's president of the United States. He's only doing what past presidents have done before him, like Joe Biden and Barack Obama, Democratic presidents.
There's an agreement that he has expanded it far beyond that.
He has taken it to a new level. And one of the things that he's done, Greenland is part of Denmark, which is part of NATO. And he's basically said, I will attack and occupy a NATO country, which is going to trigger an obligation of 31 countries to oppose the United States. Mr. Trump is upsetting any semblance of a rule-based international order. He's giving license to any country in the world. If you got the power, and these are the words of Mr. Trump and Stephen Miller, you just do whatever you want because that's how it's always been. So we can imagine the whole globe is going to be in turmoil indefinitely, mind you, at least 15, 20 years, because all it amounts to is the strong do what they can, the weak suffer what they must. And there is no limit whatsoever. Trump said it himself. The only thing that restrains me is my moral conscience. That's the only thing that can stop me. No law. And he said specifically, he said international law is what I say it is.
This is how, I mean, this is no secret. This is how President Trump negotiates. This is how he speaks. He speaks in extremes. Look, Greenland is a brilliant strategic decision if it ever comes to fruition.
To get 31 NATO countries to attack the United States, they're going to react against us.
And you're stepping way ahead.
No, you're brilliant. In Venezuela, what are we going to do in Venezuela?
You've already sent us to war.
Let me focus domestic. Let me jump in here for a second, though. I wanted to. So we're talking international. Let's talk about the use of executive authority when it comes to domestic very quickly, because you brought up the instance of the woman Renee Good who was killed in Minnesota. We've seen the U.S. president sending in the National Guard into Democratic-run cities to enforce immigration law. Let me start with you, Patrick, because Republicans are very intent on preserving states' rights. Why is the president not respecting it in this case, then?
Yeah, sure. First of all, look, during Joe Biden, approximately millions and millions, approximately 10 million, according to CBP folks, came across the border during Joe Biden's time in office. The border was completely open and porous. And this is not possible to remain a country if you have just people coming through over and over and over without any process to become a citizen in the United States of America, or without even knowing who any of these people are. And so this, again, here is another one of President Trump's promises.
Renee Good was a U.S. citizen.
Look, there are, first and foremost, look, she didn't deserve to die, but look, a number of things. But she was, look, by another camera angle, the police, the CBP was run over.
You got eyes like I do.
Yeah, but look, I mean, it's, but they are enforcing the law of the United States of America.
The law says citizens cannot be deported.
Of the United States of America. Yeah, but they're not citizens. They're people, a lot of these people are
Bruce, we're going to continue this because I certainly...
U.S. citizens. This isn't allowed in other countries in the world. We just accepted that over the last 4 decades of years.
They're targeting citizens themselves. They end up in El Salvador because there's no due process.
Okay, well, talking about the law is a perfect segue into this next package, because we're going to talk about those who have been convicted and how the president has used his pardon power. In fact, since returning to office, Donald Trump has made frequent use of his presidential pardon power, issuing clemency at a rate that exceeds that of his predecessors. Now, critics say many of the decisions appear politically motivated. Al Jazeera's Patty Culhane has a look at who has been released from prison, given clemency, and will no longer have to pay restitution to their victims.
It started on day one. Blanket pardons and clemency for the more than 1,500 people found guilty of crimes involving the storming of the Capitol on January 6th, a failed attempt to overturn President Donald Trump's election loss.
What they've done to these people is outrageous. There's rarely been anything like it in history, in the history of our country.
The controversy would continue, pardoning former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez, who had been sentenced to 45 years in prison for helping move tons of cocaine into the United States.
I mean, they could say that you take any country you want. If somebody sells drugs in that country, that doesn't mean you arrest the president and put him in jail for the rest of his life.
But that didn't apply to Nicolas Maduro, the president of Venezuela, who weeks later was captured and detained by U.S. Special Forces on drug charges. Some of the pardons have seemed to enrich those close to Trump. Jack Berkman and Jacob Wall were convicted in 2 states for sending out robocalls aimed at suppressing the black vote in the 2020 election. They are lobbyists. And according to this filing, Joseph Schwartz gave them $960,000. The reason listed, seeking a federal pardon. It worked. The nursing home owner who defrauded the U.S. government out of $38 million was pardoned. Another person who paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to lobbyists close to Trump, Changpeng Zhao, founder of Binance crypto exchange, pardoned after being sentenced for money laundering. Reports are that the company works closely with the Trump family's cryptocurrency that has made them billions of dollars.
He was recommended by a lot of people. A lot of people say that, are you talking about the crypto person? A lot of people say that he wasn't guilty of anything.
One pardon was expected. Ross Ulbricht, sentenced to life in prison for running Silk Road, a dark web marketplace. He had become a hero of libertarians, so Trump made this promise before the election.
And if you vote for me on day one, I will commute the sentence of Ross Ulbricht to a sentence of time served.
And then there's Paul Walzak. Reportedly, his mother spent $1 million to attend a Trump fundraiser. He was pardoned a few weeks later on tax fraud charges. The U.S. Constitution puts no checks on presidential pardons, but in modern American history, no other president has come close to the number of Trump pardons, and it's only been a year. The number is expected to continue to grow, along with likely controversy. Patty Culhane, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Okay, we want to delve into this issue of presidential pardons a little bit more. Our guests still here in studio, Patrick Mara and Bruce Fein. Patrick, let me start with you. Is the president using the presidential pardon power as intended to correct injustice?
Well, look, I think we need to take it back a little bit. Here we have a president who was wrongly impeached 2 times but not removed from office. Here is a president who the justice system was weaponized against him, especially during the 4-year gap that he was not, in a very partisan way by President Joe Biden. And here's a man whose home was raided by the FBI. So I think he feels some closeness to some of these folks who were prosecuted and what he believes unfairly prosecuted. And so he is doing what he believes is right.
He's using it as a political weapon then?
I don't think he's using it as a political weapon. I think he's doing what he believes is right.
What do you think, Bruce?
Mr. Trump is a transactional person. The New York Times produced a huge list of those who received presidential pardons and found a very close relationship on those who had made political campaign contributions to Mr. Trump or committed crimes that are very similar to the 34 felonies he was convicted in New York, and it was not overturned. To try to suggest that the system really shouldn't be punishing fraud. Now, James Madison at the Virginia ratification debate said surely a president would be and should be impeached and removed from office for using the pardon power to shelter his political or personal friends. Again, Congress is doing nothing, but I do want to say that Trump is not the first one to abuse the pardon power like this. We had Bill Clinton and Mark Rich's pardon, and Roger Clinton, he gives pardons to his family. Joe Biden gives a pardon to Hunter Biden. I think Mr. Trump has taken it to a new level. Unlike other presidents, all of the pardons come out of the White House. There's no Justice Department review, no pardon attorney review. No one goes back to the U.S. attorney who prosecuted the case and said, was there any injustice here? It's clearly a transactional operation here. And if we ask as well, with regard to Juan Orlando Hernandez, he smuggled 400 tons of cocaine into the U.S., right? He said, we're going to stuff these drugs up the nose of the gringos. And Mr. Trump pardons him. At the same time, he says, I have to go after Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela because he's connected to drug smuggling in the United States. Now, how does that compute? It's obviously, this is being done just to show Mr. Trump can do whatever he wants. He doesn't care anything about the drug smuggling. In fact, if he was really consistent with his reasoning, he should be prosecuting the drug users who are giving money to people he says are terrorist organizations. He's not doing that at all. So the demand side is nothing.
Is this an unequal application?
Look, I mean, he's using the pardon process as he sees fit as president of the United States. Again, he was unfairly treated by both the justice system, the FBI over the last 4 years. He was impeached twice and not removed, not eventually removed.
That doesn't mean that impeachment was wrong. But how can you say that? Treated unjustly, the U.S. Supreme Court gave him all this immunity. It wasn't because that there was insufficient evidence. It was, in fact, Trump's own prosecutors, before he fired them, who were going after and looking and coming up with probable cause, to believe that, for example, the Espionage Act had been violated down in Mar-a-Lago. So treated unjustly, he never had to go to trial. Look, he dismissed cases against himself.
The Democratic Party has a severe case of Trump derangement syndrome, and this is just going to continue all the way through 2028 and January 2029.
How can you say that when Trump-owned appointees have refused to go and prosecute cases that Trump wanted to prosecute, for example, in the Eastern District of Virginia or up in the Southern District of New York? These are Trump appointees said there's nothing there. They're leaving the Justice Department in droves because they know their position is not to wreak vengeance on Mr. Trump's opponents.
Again, he's using the pardon process as he sees fit. But I mean, it's not.
I guess the question that I have is, look,
it's a pardon. Legal. It's not like a.
It's legal. Like he's using his constitutional authority, but at the same time, at what point does exercising constitutional authority become interference in the justice system?
Look, I mean, what he's doing is also from a strategic point of view. I mean, look, he's trolling the media. Yeah. The Democratic Party is just going to keep chasing after
Patrick,
this.
He has
and it's not going to do anything.
And he took an oath to uphold, defend, and preserve the Constitution of the United States. And notwithstanding that oath, he tells NBC News, I really don't think I have to honor my oath of office, even though it's a condition of entering office.
Now, but who enforces the boundary, Bruce?
Excuse me?
I mean, who enforces that boundary?
The boundary has to ultimately be enforced by the Congress of the United States and we the people. When we first drafted the Constitution and Ben Franklin exited Independence Hall, he said, we've given you a republic if you can keep it. If the American, and there I would agree with Patrick, if the American people are indifferent, they don't really care whether the president torches the Constitution and we go back to kingship, the system isn't going to hold.
Well,
we're going to go back
a second
with
term
one man rules.
Indicate that?
The second term, we are now testing that. In 2026, I believe we are going to either have the Senate hold and move Mr. Trump from office, or the whole system is going to collapse. We may end up with a disintegrated country, dissolving like the Soviet Union to many different states, but we will not have rule of law, for sure.
I'm a little more optimistic.
Okay, let's hear it.
Look, I think President Trump, we know this. He speaks in extremes. This is the way he negotiates.
In extremes. How can you say he just speaks in extremes?
He speaks in extremes.
He sent the military into Venezuela.
He normally gets a compromise.
He's killed hundreds of people. He has Renee.
He didn't kill Maduro.
What?
He didn't kill Maduro.
No, I understood. But he killed 75 others, and he killed also. He couldn't kill Maduro because he couldn't have the excuse of having a drug trial. But he's killed hundreds of others.
No, I mean, you're talking about what, ICE raids?
No, hundreds in the Caribbean and in the Pacific that continue.
Yeah,
even in the military invasion of Venezuela, there were hundreds who were killed.
The whole premise
by
of his
military
campaign
authority.
was America first.
No.
Look, he's going after drug runners.
He's not America first going after Greenland, claiming that he should get the Nobel Peace Prize for solving the problem.
Strategically, Greenland is a brilliant idea. One day we will regret if we do not have Greenland.
Greenland is going to have
China and Russia is flowing through up there. We're the only nation in the world who can defend Greenland.
As we speak now, Patrick, we have agreements to have
Denmark
all
is
of
not
our
defending
military
Greenland.
force. We're already in Greenland. We have the ability to use that. When Trump was asked, how can you have this military? He said, I just have to own things. I feel psychologically reposed when I own things. He didn't say it actually would advance what we need strategically to make Greenland part of NATO. This is totally a personal
whether we're talking
aggrandizement.
federally, whether we're talking internationally, how does resistance differ really from defying the law? I mean, Democrats say they don't like this, that he's exceeded his presidential authority. There has been resistance, but explain to me sort of that nuance.
No, we don't. I do not believe in violating the law. We still have peaceful avenues of redress. And the way this is supposed to be done, it's what Ben Franklin called a substitute for tyrannicide, is hearings, the impeachment power. I've actually drafted contingent articles of impeachment that tell Mr. Trump, you got 45 days to issue these orders to come into compliance or we're going to remove you. But that is the way. I do not believe in protesting through violence. I oppose that. Even if you don't like ICE, you still have to respect them. But ICE also has to respect the Constitution as well. When the government becomes a lawbreaker, it invites every man and woman to become a law unto themselves. And it creates anarchy. And it's more important that the government turns square corners, even that citizens, although I'm all in favor of peaceful avenues of protest, but not violence. That is the balance that the Constitution strikes.
How close are we to that?
No, I mean, look, I mean, the far left, the left, I mean, there are a lot of paid protesters in this country these days.
Probably on both sides.
On the Republican side, who's funding paid protesters on the Republican side?
Okay.
I mean, that's the thing, is like, Republicans aren't really motivated to go out and protest because they're working during the day at their job.
Yeah.
Right? So a lot of these protesters, yeah, but the Democratic Party, it's not natural for a Republican to go out and protest. It's like Democrats think they're on the Pettus Bridge when they're going to protest the opening of a new 7-Eleven.
No, I think Republicans, when they're not in power, they protest as well.
We've only got about 45 seconds left, gentlemen. Let's just very quickly, each last word, guardrails. Who's going to impose them then?
Well, I'm hopeful that, and I work on this with members of Congress, both sides. Again, we have the Constitution here. It's all about process.
Quickly.
Now, are we going to get a response?
No.
I think we possibly could when the American people find they've had enough.
Look, it's America first, right? President Trump is following through on promises he made on the campaign trail. I think he is doing a fantastic job in doing that.
Patrick, thank you. Thanks for watching our special coverage, lively, very much so, of President Trump's 1 year in office. You can watch a repeat of this later at 18:30 and 21:30 GMT.
Don't miss out, get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news and expert insights. Like, share, stay ahead.